Hey guys, welcome back. So this is going to be the follow-up video for our island tier list that we did the other day. I just want to give a quick little clarification real quick. By the time you're watching this video, in case we have any misunderstandings as to how I ranked my island tier list, this tier list is based on pool priority. That is the number one objective of this tier list. It is not based on how strong your unit is gonna be at E2. So for example, I think one of the biggest contention is that E2 Casterist is on the same tier as an E2 Archer, and even lower than E2 Aircraft and Fei Xiao. Main reason why this is gonna be the case, because I've also explained in a lot of my other clips channel video, is that if you were a Casterist main, her priority for the E2 is gonna be lower for her other Remembrance teammates like Evernight as well as Hyacinth, compared to if you were an Aircraft or Fei Xiao main, where their number one priority for their respective teams are gonna be their E2s. Right? So in terms of their individual team comps, that is the reason why you would see a higher demand for these two islands instead of a Casterist island, right? If it's just gonna be in a vacuum on which is gonna be a stronger island, obviously E2 Casterist is gonna go up there, not just because of her E2, but just like generally speaking, her kit is just way better compared to some of the units here, right? So we are gonna use that as a benchmark for my next video coming up, which is going to be after this Lycone tier list, where I'm gonna be discussing to you guys how do you cost max in Honkai Stario. So cost maxing is gonna be a practice we are gonna be conducting where I'll be going through every single team as a main DPS, because the way that HSR plays, right, is that it doesn't really matter which teams are gonna be meta, because meta is arbitrary. It more so depends on which main DPS you prefer to play, and if you prefer to play a specific main DPS, then their respective cost maxing island upgrades or Lycone upgrades is gonna be more important. Right? So for example, if you want a cost max for My Day, E1 My Day will be the number one priority. If you want a cost max for Fei Xiao, E2 Fei Xiao. But of course, if you want to like cost max for Casterist, to cost max her teams, you prioritize getting Evernight Islands before Islands, right? You prioritize Hyacinth Islands before Islands, right? So that will be our third video in this entire series. Just for today, we are going to be doing the pool priority for a Lycone tier list in the big 2026. With all that being established, let's finally get into this video right here. Again, these are just gonna be my subjective opinions, right? A subjective opinion. Feel free to agree or disagree. So for example, previously I was brought up by one of my viewers that E2 Archer should be a little bit higher. So I've actually decided to make the adjustment of bumping E2 Archer to the pool category right behind E2 Sparkle, right? Very, very thankful for all of the no war, peaceful, logical discussion topics so far, and I hope to see more of this going forward in the future. With that being established, let's just jump in right now. So number one, for the version 1 Lycones, if you could get them from redeeming from the shop, I have been told by members of the community, you can't say they are free, right? Because you need to spend money on the battle pass to get them. Even though you don't spend any limited pools for them, you can't say they're free, right? So going with this logic, this is gonna be a no, because there's this thing called the free Archer Lycone. And if you do not have the free Archer Lycone, there is literally a free cruising in the Stellar Sea, which honestly is a very, very good substitute. I don't think there's any reason to putting Stella's Lycone, so that's gonna be that. For Qingyuan's Lycone, I'm gonna be for real, also no. Because if I'm not mistaken, we have quite a bit of erudition Lycones nowadays that basically replaces what Qingyuan's Lycone is gonna be able to do. And frankly speaking, if you are gonna be a Qingyuan main, you are probably better off investing cost maxing on like E1 Sunday to increase damage, right? Speaking from the perspective of a Qingyuan main. So that is gonna be that. This one honestly is not bad. But there are so many good abundance Lycones nowadays. For example, Shared Feeling, Pose of Conversation, that I don't really see any big usage case for Luocha's Lycone, but I would say it's at least better than Silan Jingwen though. So a little bit higher, but I personally would not be spending my pools for Mr. Luocha as well. Okay, this is just like, okay, I need one more tip for this. Hold up. If you ever get this Lycon on your account, I really feel a little bit sorry for you because this is the worst Lycon that's ever been made in HSR. Frankly speaking, there has not been any change in the Lycons since the Lycons will never get Nova Flare. So compared to our Lycon tier list back in 2025, the only big changes I could say is just how the individual units have changed in the meta. So a unit that's like generally a little bit stronger after they got their respective Nova Flares, then their Lycon value might go up a little bit more, right? Depending on their team comps, right? Do you want to get their teammates as an investment, right? How good is Break nowadays? So for example, maybe back then Firefly's Lycon or like Fuchs Lycon is like, low in priority. But because we do have like the additional Nova Flare, we got Daria, and Break team is just doing very well, I would say that Firefly's S1 is probably going to be a little bit higher, right? But just as an example, let's move on to the next one. Okay, this one, I don't think it's that bad, but Kafka uses Tutorial S5 so well that I will just never get this. Because Tutorial S5 it's literally a better replacement because energy regeneration on Kafka is pretty much guaranteed at 100% of the time, especially because if you're going to be running Black Sword, right? Assuming you run the best and sword DOT team, so no change, I will not be getting this Lycon. Blade's Lycon is probably around the same tier as Luocha. It's not bad, but we do have this like My Days S1 if you kind of want to go for him. But I think it's not too crazy. If you want, sure. If you don't, there's also Rare Pass Lycon, the event Lycon, which is not too shabby, but also not that high of a priority. Okay, Fu Xuan, I would say, is probably still around here. Very useful for Divergent Universe and SU, where you want to get the additional healing. And if you ever want to use Fu Xuan, you're probably going to be sticking with this with her because you have energy regeneration. But I would say probably one of the better slots compared to the other Lycons in this list, mainly just for the SU DU. If you want to take Fu Xuan into endgame content, I have been told that Fu Xuan sustain nowadays is just like very rough. And you realistically wouldn't really run Fu Xuan as a sustain anyways because we have a free DHPD and you have like Hyacinth, you have like maybe like, you want to run Huo, maybe version 4 gets new sustain. So in endgame content, not so much, but for DU, SU, really good, right? Okay, this is, I would say, if you are an E2 Dale main, right? If you want to play Dale, this Lycon is really good because you have energy regeneration, which directly allows you to get into your 3 EBA states a lot faster. If you are not an E2 Dale main, you just wouldn't pull. Right, but if you were an E2 Dale main, you want to play Dale, this is pretty much the best in slot with very little replacements, so I will put that up in the pool category. Topaz Lycon is honestly pretty versatile. As a matter of fact, this is probably one of those Lycons I'll put up here. Even though you could redeem from the shop, assuming that you're going to be spending limited pool force. Okay, actually no here. Because the only other unit that will use this Topaz Lycon is Asheville. But between getting Asheville's Lycon or Topaz Lycon, I would just go ahead and get Asheville's Lycon. Because it is just basically a better version of Topaz. But if you already have a Topaz Lycon from last time, you could just give this Topaz Lycon to Asheville directly, which can save you the Asheville Lycon's cost. So it is not so much you will spend pools for Topaz, but it is like if you had her from last time, she is a pretty good Lycon to just give it to Asheville, save a little bit. So for example, if you had this, I would rather invest one cost to E1 Asheville instead of S1 Asheville, right? Because you can use this as a replacement. So that is gonna be right there. This is just a, I would say around Blade here. Right, I think they're both very similar, nothing too crazy, and Jingliu just suffers really bad from the current meta where like she almost basically does not see play anywhere else. I will put her here frankly if I could, but probably around the same tier as Blade if you really want to play Jingliu. So that is gonna be that. Alright, no words needed, so just okay, Huo's Lycon. I am gonna keep it a buck. No. The reason why I'm putting Huo in the no category is because Shared Feeling is just that good of a Lycon. Alright, so in case you guys don't know what I'm talking about, hold up. This or this have been seeing more usage than Huo's S1. So this is team-wide energy regeneration, which is 4 energy. Basically best in slot for an Evanescence team. So for those situations where your Yao Guang has a 177 out of 180 energy, you pray to God you had Shared Feeling. Super good. And if you want to strictly talk about energy regeneration, did you know that Huo's S1 is literally lower ER than Post-Ops S5? Because this is 24% ER. Her own S1 only caps out at 12. which is a little bit silly, right? So unfortunately, I just would not be spending my pulls for the Huan S1. This is like, okay, honestly, not too bad. If you have Bros S1, you could give this to Fei Xiao. I would not be spending my pool for... Actually, as a matter of fact, even if you want to spend pool for Daughter Ratio, I don't think he's ever going to get a rerun ever again. Because I think Hoyo knows how absolutely useless Bro is going to be at this stage of point. And if you do want to give this to Fei Xiao, you might as well just get a Fei Xiao S1, right? So that's going to be in the no category. Okay. In S1 perspective, it's alright. But personal experience, if I were to put it in my personal experience, I really, really like this Lycone. Alright, personal experience. I don't think it is that high. Mainly more so because of the fact that previously, if you see more usage with Run Maze S1, it enables your turn 1 HMC ultimate. Alright, that was like the main use case for the S1. The skill point is kind of whatever nowadays, especially if you play Firefly. And previously for the Braid teams, Rapper and Boothill had a lot more competitive performance compared to Firefly, but now strictly because of the way that they have made the Nova Flare for Firefly, and Firefly having data to have essentially no ultimate issues, you don't really even use Ramen that much when you can just run HMC, and HMC can just run DDD, and sometimes you could just go for the DDD for the additional AV advance. Not as crazy as back in those days, but I think this S1 is still a pretty decent value. Would I pull? Probably yes. But if you don't have this, I don't think it's gonna be at the end of the world, right? Actually, you know what? I'll put this a little bit lower. But it's still one of the better version 1 Lycones you can have, specifically for Runway. If you take this to S5 one fine day, I will actually put it, because I actually use this very frequently for my S5, or rather my free bubbin, right? So that is gonna be for our S1 Runway. Now moving on into that is our version 1 Lycone tier list, which is actually really, really fast. This Lycone, it could have been great, right? It could have been great. But the thing is, we have this Lycone right here, right? It really could have been great. If I could give this Lycone a rating, it would be DDD tier. But unfortunately, DDD is gonna be a 4-star Lycone, and because of Bro's existence, I just really, really would never ever spend Lycones, or rather spend Synergies for Sparkle's Lycone. And as a matter of fact, even till this day, I do not have Sparkle's Lycone, and I've never ever thought, oh my god, I wish I had Sparkle's Lycone. So TLDR, no. Where is that? Black Swan's Lycone? I think Bro have more users now, especially with DOT's improvements. But highest Lycone definitely takes a higher priority. If you want to talk about strictly highest possible amount of damage, you could technically run Jiao Qiu's Lycone. So if you put for E0 S1 Jiao Qiu back in those days, I would actually run Jiao Qiu's Lycone for TY damage amplification, and then you can keep that as is, then save the S1 from Black Swan to give E1 Black Swan. But that is assuming you have S1 Jiao Qiu. If you don't have S1 Jiao Qiu, I think Black Swan is going to be okay. But priority for all of your DOT Lycones, number 1 should be highest lens. Then number 2 is between Black Swan and Jiao Qiu, see which one you have. Kafka is gonna be on tutorial, so never pull Kafka's S1. But this is gonna be up there, right? So that will be that for our Black Swan. Okay, I think nowadays, if you were an Acheron main, I'm just gonna really assume that, you know, number 1, you want to play Acheron, and number 2, the stacks you get from this, it will definitely help your ultimate to get that 1 additional stack every single turn. You do have Boundless Choreo as a replacement purely from a stat perspective. So I'm talking about this the Sasbian Lex Lycone, which gives you 16% crit rate and 48% more crit damage. So from a additional damage perspective, this is fine. But if you are strictly talking about stats, or rather the stacks for your slash streams, there is not really any other replacements. And in the future, I'm not sure if Blade is gonna be an aggro support. But imagine if you get a Blade as an aggro support, and you're missing that 1 stack to cast your ultimate, right? So I think for Aggron mains, this is pretty much one of the better investments. Like for example, I would aim for an E0 S1 Aggron as a start, get an E0 S0 Blade if Blade is a support, and then work my ways towards the E2 Aggron, right? So that is gonna be that. This is like, I don't really like this. It's like it's not bad, because for Avengers S1, you do get the additional debuff right? You do get this additional debuff, 100% base chance for 10% damage taken. It is really mainly just for Aggron back then to get one more stack with your basic. But if you don't want to care about this, you frankly can just not, because we have this thing called DHPT, and Aventurine has not seen play for like 10,000 years. So I personally, actually, you know what? I'll put it here, right? I personally wouldn't, actually, can we give this to DHPT? Okay, technically you could, but the defense main stat is like just really useless, and it's on bro's follow-up attack. I mean, the dragon counts as a follow-up attack, right? But it's not the wearer, it's like your allies follow-up attack. So I guess it doesn't even work. So TLDR, I just would not get this because DHPT is just simply way too good of a sustain. So that's that. Boot Hill. If you were a Boot Hill main, yeah, I will get Boot Hill's icon. Just like how if you're gonna be a Reba main, you're gonna be getting Reba's icon. It is probably one of the cheaper cost investments. Between E1 Boot Hill and S1 Boot Hill, I think I'll get eventually both if you were a main. But the defense down on this is honestly pretty substantial, as well as the speed increase. If you don't want to get that, we do have this other 4-star alternative, which is the Shadow by Night. This is pretty good. Alright, as a decent-ish replacement, I would consider this if you do not want to get Boot Hill's S1. Not as crazy as Aggron, but I think it's still going to be up there for your vertical support. Bobbin S1... Nah, I don't think this is that crazy anymore, because like nowadays, the only times you're going to be using Bobbin is you're going to be with Facial or Asheville. You don't really see Bobbin too frequently outside of the follow-up attacking team. Maybe you could consider getting this for Asheville, but I don't think it's gonna be to an end or be all. Like, for example, get E1 Bobbin before the S1, and you could always pivot this Bobbin to the free light code if you have enough copies, right? I personally have not used S1 Bobbin in such a long ass time. I don't think this thing's value is gonna be too high, right? So that is gonna be there for Bobbin. Okay, I think Firefly's light code, frankly, it can go wrong here. Because at a certain point, once you get the additional stats from the... Okay, let's just take a look right here, right? If you just filter out by Firefly's icon, you can just see you get the additional break damage increase. And the lower speed technically helps you potentially squeeze in a break here and there before they recover. Especially if you're going to be changing out your runway out for HMC. That being said, for Firefly's S1, there's just one inherent problem, which is we have this thing called Mr. Isolation. So if you pulled for Finon's S1, if you were a Finon main, you theoretically could just skip out the Firefly S1 and share Isolation with Firefly. This is completely viable. But I'm going by the logic where if you were a Firefly main, and you don't want to pull for Finon's S1, you could just stick with this that you already have and just slap it on. Because stat-wise, this is honestly pretty decent. Like, it is pretty decent. And the additional base speed, sometimes you might not see it being that in play. And this damage percentage, it is a little bit wasteful, right? But other than that, I would say that generally they are very comparable. So if you have this, you skip this. If you have this, you don't really need this for Firefly. Actually, you know what? I'll put this a little bit lower. Hellfire on S1. With that being established, Jade, I'm not sure who actually plays Jade in the Big 2-6, but personally, as a QQ main, I do see this being in play for my QQ. I literally give this to QQ every single day, so that is the only reason why bro is in PU and not no, because I actually do not use Jade for like such a long ass time, so Jade's icon is gonna be in that category. Jiao Chou's S1, like I mentioned, it is very comparable with Black Swan. So if you have Jiao Chou's S1, you could theoretically just sub out Black Swan's S1. If you have this, vice versa. For Jiao Chou himself specifically, I wouldn't worry about it. Because we always have Resolution S5 as a replacement. And frankly speaking, I'm not sure if you're still going to be using Jiao Chou with Aggron. Because what if Blade, you know? So just for DOT mains, you're comparing between these two. Aggron mains, not so much, right? Next icon is going to be Yun Li. Okay, I'm not sure if y'all still play Yun Li. But if you do play Yun Li in the Big 2-6, this is really fucking important. Because of the additional taunt chance. It basically almost doubles the frequency of you getting hit. But the thing with Yun Li is, she just don't deal enough damage fast enough, since she's always a reactionary DPS. And we have a lot more AoE attacks nowadays. So even if she doesn't get hit, she can still get the energy by simply being collateral damage. So I would say based on her current meta placement, as well as like, you could theoretically, okay, I'm not sure if this is free, but if chat wants to say this is free, sure. I'm just going to put it along the same niche alongside with our rather Jade's Lycon, right? So there's that for Ying Li. Moving on next. Okay, you know what? Can I just please put this here? Like, come on, guys.
The greatest Fei Xiao agenda pusher that has ever lived.
All right. I think we can have one little, like, let's just be real, guys. Bro, let's just be real. Bro, which Lycon gives you 54% defense ignore? Y'all know this is 54% defense ignore, right? Bro, 54, bro. 54% defense ignore, right? Realistically speaking, okay, fine. Okay, realistically speaking, I just want to say I would prefer Fei Xiao's Lycon way more than Acheron's Lycon. I think this 54% defense on is literally fucking insane, especially because you stack this on with Ashville's 40% defense door. So you add this with Ashville, it's 94% defense door, which is legitimately fucking crazy. But I personally would... Okay, hey, chat, you know what? Shut. I'm leaving it as that. If you're a Fei Xiao main, you will agree with me, right? All Fei Xiao mains in the world will agree that Fei Xiao's Lycon is absolutely fucking diabolical, so silence. Okay, this one is definitely not gonna be as important because we have this other thing called Shed Feeding, and I'ma keep it about most Firefly mains who do have Lingsha, they have been doing perfectly well without Lingsha's S1 because you are gonna be able to do enough damage with your E2 Firefly, with your Dahlia, and whether or not you get this Ice one, it doesn't really change the outcome of the battle itself, so I'll put this in the PU category, really not too worth it as a one cost investment, right? So that's gonna be that. Reba's S1, I'm gonna once again put this on the same tier as Boot Hill. So if you were gonna be a Reba main, I would definitely consider picking this up. Not nearly as important as compared to the others, but all of the break Lycons for each respective break DPS, it is gonna be up there in terms of priority. So to each their own. If you want to play her, skip her. If you play her, then you can definitely consider getting that S1, right? Sunday. Okay. This one is a little bit more of an oddball because I see more use with Sunday's Lycon than Sunday himself, but the situation use case for Sunday is rather niche. So the biggest impact I saw with Sunday's S1 is mainly if I want to take away the S5 DDD from Sparkle and use her alongside E1 Archer, because this Lycon does give you additional skill points every 2 skill ultimate and energy regeneration to maintain your Sparkle's ultimate uptime. That is the only situation I would consider running this with Sparkle, right? So if you do not want DDD, this S1 is honestly really good, specifically for Archer, in which you are definitely going to run into skill point issues, right? For the highest possible amount of damage. If you do not run Sunday's S1 with, Archer, it doesn't really see a lot of play, just because S5 DDD is a thing. So for Archer mains, you can consider running with Sparkle. For everyone else, it is not as important, but I would still consider it a decent-ish upgrade for most Harmony supports, right? Even your Ting Yuan, your Bronya, you could all run this just because it gives skill point and energy, right? More value than Sunday as of this moment, and maybe, like, let's just say Tajwo, if Sunday gets a Noah Flare, I think this can also see play very, very well, right? So that is gonna be that. One last version 2 Lycon that is going to be Fagyu. I'ma keep it a buck because we have Resolution. It is also not a very good cost investment, right? E0 S0 Fugue is perfectly serviceable. As a matter of fact, the E1 is just way more important than the S1, purely just from a additional damage, which is competing with defense down. But one thing to keep in mind is, for your Fugue's Lycon, right? Your Fugue's Lycon doesn't give you defense down, it gives you vulnerability. Where's bro again? Right, it gives you damage taken. So if you are gonna be running Firefly with, for example, Finon's S1, because Finon S1 gives you additional 18% defense ignore, remember to not overcap on your defense ignore. So for example, ever getting your defense break on your E1 Firefly, right, your E1, all the defense ignore stacks, if they exceed 100%, resolution is actually really useless, so I wouldn't go for that. If you do not hit 100% defense down and you can hit it with resolution, then I will go for the resolution S5, right? Other than that, just keep in mind a little bit and you should be good to go, right? So that is going to be our version 2 light cone pool priority. So far, nothing really too high in the highest of the highest. We are now going to be moving on to version 3 light cones, starting off with D Herda. You know what? This is going to be our first pool, right? I think this is one of those few light cones that I actually wished I had on my free-to-play account the moment I want to play D Herda. Alright, if you don't play D Herda, like I said, you can skip it, it's fine. But if you were ever a D Herda main, this additional skill point can help you a lot when it comes to your overall rotations, as well as the additional damage, because my side grade to this, I'm currently using the Herda Store S5, which is like a genuinely significant damage downgrade, because you miss the crit, you miss a skill point, and you miss a damage bonus. So for D Herda mains, this is a very nice cost investment upgrade. And also, just from my personal experience, I am not too sure if Anexa is going to be staying in place with D Herda forever. If they, for example, release like a version 4 edition and D Herda is still your E2 S1, that is a very easy swap out. But your S1 is still going to be with D Herda, and D Herda, her kit is designed to be synergistic with other evolution units. So because of that, I think this S1 is going to be definitely up there in the poo category. Aglaia, I'm going to keep it about both Aglaia's E1 and S1. They are really good, because you get your speed from your S1, which helps you hit your specific speed thresholds, which can sometimes push you up before Garment Maker, and then her E1 gives you energy. So a full complete Aglaia is E1 S1. So both of them are like really up there in the priority. So both Herta and Aglaia, which is going to be our 3.0 DPS, is going to be our first pool category, right? Very good. Okay, My Day. Okay, this is gonna look like a little bit crowded, but My Day's S1 is also really good. Because the way that My Day's S1 works is actually very similar to Akron, because it gives you stacks, right? If you take a look into the description here, you will gain this additional HP consumption, which is directly tied to your God Slayer charge mechanic. So having this S1 lets you build up God Slayer at a much greater basis, right? And if you really want to, you could consider sharing this with Blade, but I will still run Blade S1 for Blade himself. But this is, for a Mighty main, E1 S1 is basically the same investment I will stop compared to, like, let's just say E1 S1 Aglaia, right? Then you just start investing into your 3Bs, investing into your Cyrene, all that kind of stuff. So very nice S1 upgrade. Next light cone is going to be none other than Teep. Now, I know most players, right? Okay, I will just put this like from a baseline. Most players have this thing called S5 DDD, right? But I just want to say this S1, it does give you a substantial damage increase if you're going to be using Teep quite a bit. Because you do get energy regeneration, which can guarantee you turn on ultimates if you don't have enough energy, as well as the crit damage buff, right? So from a damage standpoint, this is actually quite nice, but just because of how frequently S5 DDD has been used, I can't really put this value any higher than this. A little bit lower than Sunday, but Sunday is really just because there's a very niche situation where I appreciate Sunday's skill point regeneration and energy recovery, whereas for 3B's S1, I don't see a time where I would pick this over S5 DDD, because the situation hasn't really arisen unless you want to hit like very specific damage benchmarks where you want to clear out the wave in this one cycle, then you go to the next wave, right? But generally, if you have S5 DDD, this is gonna be a good enough use case over there. Okay, very nice. Alright, I think if you are gonna be a Caster's main, this is probably one of the top 3 light cones to invest in. But then again, most of Caster's Remembrance teammates light cones, they are like super good. Both, or rather not both, Caster's S1, Hyacinth S1, Ammonite S1, they are all like really good. And I think that is like the way that Hoyoverse designed the Remembrance flagship team, which is to make like a baseline EZO S1 cost Chipu. And then afterwards, you want to get more vertical investments cost, start with Ammonite, followed by Hyacinth, and then you decide between Casuarist or Cyrene. So this should be up here. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I might just put this here. Okay, I'll be a little bit more neutral. I'll probably adjust the list a little bit as we go down, but I might bring up Casuarist S1 in that sense. Moving on to the next icon. Nexa's S1 is fine, but I have been using E0 S0 Anexa, which is from the free event icon that gives you the additional attack. It has been doing okay for me. Like, there wasn't really a situation where I wish I had the S1. I mean, sometimes I had the additional energy, then the S1 would have been quite nice. But even though I don't have a Nexa's S1, it is not really as comparable to, let's just say, like D-Hera's S1, right? So, still decent enough where you can get the value, but nothing too insane. So I'll just put this around the pool category. But one thing to note that if you want to run a Nexa as a main DPS, then this is definitely going to be quite high up there, right? But for a sub DPS and Nexa, it is not going to be as important. Okay. I think nobody will ever disagree with this, right? Like, you get a charge, you get a vulnerability, you get the stacks, right? Or the entire TLDR, boom, right? The first triple pool, I'm just going to leave that over there. Very, very nice. This Lycon is honestly really nice, but it faces a little bit of a similar issue as Sunday, where Sunday himself doesn't get that much use, but his Lycon is actually not too bad. Just like Cypher. Because you might not really run Cypher as much, especially in like a sustained setup, right? You might skip out Cypher, but her Lycon sees a lot of versatility outside of Cypher. You can give it to pretty much any Nihility debuffer, 24% defense down, as well as additional speed to help you hit your respective speed thresholds. Especially, for example, Steel Wolf. Right, you want to run 4-piece Eagle, you get this, you combine 24% defense down as well as the speed stats from Cypher. So I would say this is honestly a very, very, very versatile Nihility Lycon. Like, it is pretty much Resolution S5 Pro Max. So I'm going to leave that up over there. Okay, I think as of right now, I would put Finance S1 more important than Casuarist S1. If you are gonna be if you're comparing costs in a Finance team, in a Casuarist team, Finance S1 is one of the first Lycons you get, because Sarija can technically skip out on an S1, right? You could prioritize still using the event Lycon temporarily, but out of your Cyrene, Sarija, if you run DHPD, all of these units, Finance S1 is gonna be your #1 priority, right? So for any final mains, E2 S1 Finance, boom, then everything else comes after. So I will definitely put this up there. Also, if you're a Firefly main, if you get this, you can also share this with your Firefly, right? So that is gonna be your Finance S1. Okay, if you were a Saber main, this is the closest thing to a mass pool, right? If you were a Saber main. But if you don't play Saber, then it's like you just never ever pull this, right? So I think it's a very like black and white Lycon. Pull Saber, you get this. Don't pull Saber, you go all the way down. So between everything, I'll just leave her here. If Saber eventually gets like better, if she gets a buff, I could justify coming up a little bit more. But as of right now, I'm kind of chill, right? So we're just gonna leave that over there. Okay, can we rate this Lycon as a free Lycon? Should we? This is the original free, by the way. This is the original free. You do not need to spend money on it, because you spend pools. Specifically for that 3.4 with Vinon as well as the support reruns. What should we? How should we place this, guys? How should we play this? Put it on the top and make it red. Okay, you know what? Let's be fair, right? This is a no rage. I have not rage bait for like so fucking long. Let's just be fair, right? This tier list is not a question of how do you obtain a Lycon. You could obtain it for free by spending 200 pools for E2 S1 Final. You could obtain it in a single 10 pool by putting it on this banner. You could go up to 140 pools just for this S1. I'm not here to debate how to get this. I will just purely talk about if you already think of the value of the Lycon itself, should you invest Stellar Jades for it? Alright, so that will be my objective neutral take. With that being established, yep. Yes, I think this is all. Okay, maybe not as crazy as these, but yes, this is a very, very nice S1 for Archer, for Scylla. I mean, technically just Archer and Scylla. If you do not have this free S1, it's not the end of the world, which is why I didn't put it up here, but it is a substantial damage increase. Because cruising in the Stellar Sea on Herda Store is that good. Alright, you can honestly just run cruising, you get the additional crit rate, as well as the attack buff if you ever were to kill an enemy, but it will still be a decent enough idle investment upgrade if you are either a Scylla main or an Archer main. So I'll put this up here, not as close to them, but ideally you get this for free. Right? Ideally you get this for free. If you really, you can't ever justify yourself playing Archer or Scylla, you could just don't care about it. Alright, because the use case is still rather niche, so I'll just put this for here. Moving on into the next light cone is going to be... There we go. Right, you know what? I think this light cone is the only light cone that I do not have in my account that's in the poo category, because personally, your streamer is not a DOT main. Alright, and because I'm not a DOT main, I didn't pull for this. I'm just like, my DOT is a half fuck, right? But I know for a fact if you were DOT main, this light cone is absolutely fucking insane. It's like the first light cone you get for any of your DOT units. So I'm assuming that you're running triple DOT plus either DHPD or Hue. You will first get Heistland's S1 over anything else. Then Kafka is always going to be on tutorial. And then you think about where else do you go from a vertical investment, right? But also to be fair, DOT teams, they cap out, like the scaling caps out around E1 S1. Right, you don't really scale them beyond E1 S1. Then in the future, we have like another DOT unit. You could theoretically just swap this out into the next DOT unit, which is essentially what Jiao Qiu's light cone was able to do for Black Swan's light cone. So I would say that for DOT mains, this is definitely going to be up there. Again, if you don't play DOT, you can ignore it. It's fine, whatever, but I won't want to back. Alright. Okay, next unit is Saridra. I would say this one is pretty up there as well. Not too crazy though. For final specifically, it is a very substantial damage increase, but because of the way that Finon himself works, if you wanted the damage upgrade, you will still get yourself, like for example, the S1 Finon, as well as maybe even the S1 Cyrene for the... Okay, actually, you know what? I'll put it here, right? Because I'm just strictly thinking from a Finon or a Nexa team, I will prioritize getting Saridra's S1 over Cyrene's S1 and DHPD's S1. Because it's your DPS, Saridra, Cyrene, DHPD, right? So Finon S1 first, followed by, I would say, Saridra, because DHPD S1 is whatever, because the skill point comes from DHPD's E1, and then Cyrene S1 is, you can replace with like the Herda Store light cone, which is also giving you enough speed. So your next best upgrade for anyone that actually uses Saridra is gonna be this, right? You get a skill point refund and you get additional damage from your skills. So that will be our pool plus category. Now we're gonna move on into the big boy. Who is that?
The greatest Honkai Star Rail tour.
Honestly, a very comfortable light cone. If you find yourself dying, right? If you are dying because your DHPD shield cannot sustain, it is fine because you get a heal. But I have never really found myself wanting a DHPD S1, so I use this benchmark on my free-to-play account. Right, my free-to-play bob account, I have never... Okay, well, I want to spend pools for a DHPD S1. If anything, I would rather get Bro's E1, because the E1 actually gives me skill points, which I can actually use with my E1 Archer. So, because of the opportunity cost, this is a little bit lower, but if you find yourself dying too frequently, alright, like you're legit not sustaining with a DHPD because you're taking too much damage, I'll put this a little bit higher. But if your rallies are not an issue, your builds are not an issue, your team building is not an issue, I will put this a little bit lower, right? Purely from opportunity cost, right? So that is gonna be that over there. Next up is gonna be our Evernighto S1. I feel Evernight S1 is around the same caliber as Caster's S1, but slightly lower than Hyacinth. But both of these light cone S1s, you are eventually going to complete them all in a Remembrance flagship. But in just purely from priority, this is number one, numero uno. Then both of these DPS, when you can get them, you can just pick them up. So that is going to be good, super nice for your Remembrance flagship or even main DPS Evernighto. Okay, this is the light cone, right? I distinctively remember Bobu not clearing Anomaly Arbitration 3-star without this icon. Like, I physically could not clear this without S1 Cyrene, because Anomaly Arbitration was the most difficult endgame content ever, period, back then. I still remember it was the 3-star Aquila attempt. right? On my 8 cost remembrance. I had to get this to 3-star Aquila, but realistically speaking, this will be the lowest priority in your remembrance flagship. So you will get this, followed by your DPS, followed by your Cyrene. This is the last one, alright? If you do want to think about more speed stats, Herda's Door Lycon is frankly a good enough replacement, right? If you specifically just want 200 speed, you can get by with the Herda. Because what this Lycon does is essentially a damage amplification, right? You get the additional crit damage increase as well as damage taken, but the speed is pretty much the eggs. Okay, a little bit more, but it is not the end all be all. So I will still get my DPS items, not because this Lycon is bad, by the way. It is just purely from opportunity cost, because your Everknights S1 and Casuals S1, their replacements are like a lot worse compared to Cyrene's S1 to Herda's Door, right? So because of that, I will put this in a little bit lower than these in a remembrance setting. If you want to use Cyrene outside of remembrance, so I'm talking about like your E2 Cyrene with your Mighty Agda already, you can still run that E2 Cyrene at S0. You will still run E2 Cyrene first, get E2 first, then get S1 if you want to think about more cost upgrades. So for that, I'm putting her at the Pool Plus category. Next Lycon is gonna be our last version 3 Lycon, and that is none other than Delia. Essentially a very nice upgrade for break teams, right? I would say this is along the same category as you would say, okay, a little bit lower than the E1. The E1 is honestly super good, but if you need the additional 1 skill point, it will change a lot, right? And your break damage dealt is gonna be increased by 32%, applying this to the wearer and the teammate with the highest break effect. So, not as important as E1, but your next cost upgrade, okay, for a Firefly main, right? E2 Firefly, E1 Dahlia, then S1 Dahlia. So you will get S1 Dahlia before Fuke or Lingsha if you're playing Lingsha. HMC can just run DD, right? So the next most important Lycon, then Fuke is gonna be after, right? So that is gonna be our Dahlia S1. With that, we have wrapped up our version 3 Lycons, and we are now finally moving on into the final category, and that is the Hee Hee Ha Ha category, starting off with the Yao Guang S1. Okay, strictly speaking, this S1 is very for a 0 cycle brain rot is uphill, because the only way you guarantee immediate Yao Guang ultimate is with S1. You cannot hit a instant Yao Guang out because you don't have enough energy, right? The only reason you can do that is because if you take a look at this line, you get the additional energy and the fixed energy, not to mention 80% speed. So by that regard, by a lack of a Yao Guang S1, and if you were to use, for example, S5 Mushroom, you will never be able to hit that, no matter how much you want to grind. But if you are not a 0 cycler, you don't want to min-max, frankly speaking, I don't think it's that crazy, because nobody says you need to clear corner in 0 cycles, right? Not, especially not me. I've never said that. And S5 Mushroom is a very nice alternative if you do not have Yao Guang's S1 from that regard. But if you want to say, do you get the S1 on the E1 first, I would actually prioritize Yao Guang E1 over the S1 for most players. But from a 0 cycle perspective, I'll get the S1 so I can guarantee the instant ultimate. So I'll put it a little bit lower than the Poo Poo Poo. Next Lycon is going to be Miss Blair. Okay. The thing with Miss Blair, right, is that we really do not have a replacement, right? Like, Mushroom, it is a very bad Lycon for a DPS. Today's good luck is honestly not too shabby, but it is Battle Pass, so I'll leave you guys to say if you want to use Battle Pass as a free or not free Lycon. But if you don't want to worry about all that, the Hee Hee Ha Ha will allow you to ignore defense and uncap your skill point limit. This is the most important line, because if you're able to uncap your skill point limit, you are definitely gonna be running your Sparks. Assuming you are gonna be running bro with a Silver Wolf 999 setup, it will eventually be your full Elation flagship, right? And your wearer ignoring defense for up to 20%. And the entire Elation flagship hinges on defense ignore, just like how Super Break hinges on defense ignore, right? So I would say that if you're thinking about a vertical investment on Sparksy, this is pretty much going to be up there for your Sparksy mains. If you don't want to get this for Sparksy, for example, you want to save up for Evanesia. Because there might be a chance that Evanesia gets a Sparksy for certified bangers. There might not be a chance where Evanesia gets a Sparksy for certified bangers. It is like up to what Dawei wants. But as of right now, for Silver mains, this is pretty much gonna be the same level of investment. Next unit is going to be Mr. Asheville. Okay, I will actually put Asheville up here. But it is assuming that you do not want to run him on anything else. But if you are going to be running Asheville with a main DPS follow-up and you don't run Tobes, this is a significant damage upgrade. So I would definitely consider putting this here, but it also really depends on if the future follow-up attack main DPS can make use of that Lycone. So this one is going to be, if the main DPS wants their Lycone more, I'll lower this a little bit. Then you prioritize getting that main DPS icon. If the main DPS icon can get by with an E0 S0, then I'll put this up a little bit higher just because of the versatility, and you can also run this with Tobes, right? So this one is more so depending on what's going to be happening from the future versions. But for now, for any S0 mains, it is definitely going to be a very nice upgrade. Next, or rather our last two, right? Our last, okay, you know what? Final Lycone, right? Final segment. The Silver Wolf S1 versus the Evanesia S1. If you remember our tier list for Evanesia, I put Bro's Evanesia's Idolins a little bit higher than Silver Wolf. Okay, to be coming to a full circle, I'ma keep it a buck. I would pull Silver Wolf's Lycone for a Silver Wolf team more than I pull Evanesia's Lycone for an Evanesia's team. And the reason is very simple. For one cost, you get E1 Evanesia first. Whereas for Silver Wolf 1 cost, you get Silver Wolf's S1 first, right? I think that's a very straightforward answer. She already has one of the best E1s in the game, which is why her S1, not to say this bad by the way, it is still a really good Lycone, but the E1 is just too good of an upgrade to sacrifice for. So for the Silver Wolf department, it is a lot more straightforward because her E1 is a lot worse than Evanesia's E1. So I think this will come to the end of our Lycone pool priority tier list. And before I wrap up this video, any blazing disagreements from chat? Is there anything that you really are so angry? You're so angry. You need to change this. Any blazing disagreements? Rebel Lycone should be higher. Nah, I wouldn't think so. Like, okay, the reason why I wouldn't think so is because if you were a Rebel main, or a Buddha main, or a Firefly main, you will still get their respective Lycones nonetheless. But if you don't want to pull for Rebel, Buddha, or Firefly, then you wouldn't really go ahead and get those Lycones anyways. You know what I'm saying? I know that Rebel's reliance on the Lycone, it could be like higher, right? Because you have the action very advanced. But for a one cost upgrade in any Rebel / Buddha or Firefly team, I think they're around the same caliber. Or rather, I feel that they are around the same caliber. So that is going to be the reason why I'll put them in the pool value. I feel Dahlia's S1 is PvP. Nah. Now, okay, PvP is like irreplaceable. Like, you really want this. But I think this S1 is a little bit more competitive with the E1 Dahlia. Like, they're both around the same. Like, you could get an E1, you could get an S1, they're both really good. But I would just say Dahlia's E1 is just that bit better because of the fixed toughness bar damage, which can scale very well for like HP or toughness bar inflation. So I will put bro in PP. Can we have a special mention for DDD? I don't think there's a DDD Lycone here, bro. Unfortunately, there is no DDD Lycone, so what the hell is that? Is that Evanes? Oh, that is the Evanes unit. Okay, but unfortunately, we do not have DDD, so there will be no DDD. Kazra's Lycone is way more important than Hazard Lycone for the Remembrance team. Hazard has a really good 4-star replacement, while Hazardous doesn't. Okay, I know who you're talking about. You're talking about this, right? The Mimi Lycone. The baby Cyrene Lycone. Where is it? Where is it? Yes, the story's next page. I feel like this is just still like... I really don't think Castoris has that good of an option. Huh. Yeah, I mean, it's a good stat pad. But like... The upgrade from Hyacinth S1 is just so high though. It is like substantially high. Okay, but it is a pretty fair point that Castoris next... Okay, technically there is a replacement, by the way. Right? I mean, you could just run a Battle Pass Lycon. It is a replacement. Right? But it is a Battle Pass Lycon replacement. It is not a free replacement you can get from the Gacha pool. Bailu Lycon. Okay, you know what? I'll take your point. Oh my god, this feels a bit illegal though. But I'll take a point. I think if you talk about like opportunity cost, you don't really have a substitute unless you basically get Battle Pass, right? And we do have a substitute, which is Story's next page. So I think I will take your point. But you know what? Instead of Castoris S1, I feel like I also want to have Everknights S1, bro. Because Everknights S1 technically also doesn't have a replacement, bro. Iru did in fact use Bailu's Lycon and broke clear fine.
The greatest, generous, most handsome, nicest Honkai Star Rail player that has ever lived.
You know what? I'll put it like this. And the reason why I'm going to put it like this is because Everknight allows us to let everyone and their moms ignore 20% defense ignore. Whereas for Castoris herself, it is a personal defense ignore. And if we were to get E1 Everknight, I think E1 S1 Everknight... Okay, I'm just thinking this way, right? I would rather have a E1 S1 Everknight with Castoris using a Bailu Lycon than get a E1 S0 Everknight and let Castoris use her own Lycon. That is my thought process. So by that thought process, I think I would put this over here. And then for Hyacinth, when she eventually gets her the 4-star gacha, I think that is gonna be fine. But Bailu Lycon honestly is like, it's usable, bro. Right? It is a usable enough upgrade for Castoris to the point where I would still prioritize getting a team-wide defense ignore. So that is good. It isn't 80% respect, as in it is about opportunity cost. Because we do have a replacement. It is just that for, remember specifically, the only replacements you have is essentially Battle Pass. Right? You don't really have any other ways. It's either this or use Bailu Lycon. Whereas for Hyacinth, as good as the Hyacinth is, I can see why that you could temporarily just run this until you get like a better replacement. Because it is always opportunity cost. Like, what is the best bang for value at that time of time? Check Everknight's Lycon calculation. A calculation is gonna be from Hyacinth's Lycon use RMC. You can give this to RMC, but RMC can run Sirene's or not Sirene, Herastor Lycon. Opportunity cost, right? So I think with this, I am going to be leaving this as of right now. But okay, you know, fine, right? This tree, I just want to add this note. It is very, very contentious. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. Who should be the only poo-poo? I personally feel this, right? After what Chatter has mentioned, which is opportunity cost, because there is no opportunity cost greater than Everknight team-wide defense ignore, I'll go for that, right? But if you want to get a little bit more discussion, I will save this as my final Lycon ranking. Let me send this to the most peace, love, happiness community in the history of HSR. That is going to be Twitter. And we are going to say this right here in the light Cone tier list 2026. Word of the day is going to be stay tuned for cause maxing. Stay tuned for cause maxing. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, use code for your 10% off, game myself, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you.